This segment is brought to you by Audit Shield, the service that protects CPA firms when the CRA comes calling, ensuring every hour you spend responding to audits or reviews is fully covered.
Welcome to our AJAG PD Pod, the place for discussion, debate, and learning about all things accounting. Our hosts, Ivan Tabak, Jonathan Tucker, are CPAs that have been in practice for more than 3 decades. Together, they bring varying experience and viewpoints to the table, not to mention a little humor, too. Join us as we talk through current issues and hot topics, tap into expert guest insights, and enjoy the odd walk down AJAG memory lane. Before we begin today's podcast, please note, although the educational material within the podcast has been carefully prepared, none of the persons involved in the preparation of the material accepts any legal responsibility for its contents or for any consequences arising from its use. As well, the podcast material and the references contained therein may reflect laws and practices that are subject to change. Advice regarding a particular fact or situation should always be reviewed by a qualified professional. This podcast is produced and distributed by AJAG Professional Development. For more information about AJAG or any of its offerings, please visit ajag.ca.
Welcome to AJAG PD Pod Season 2, Episode 8. My name's Ivan Tabak.
My name's Jonathan Tucker.
And today we're diving into a critical issue for Canadian CPA firms, which is cyber scams, downtime, and the real cost of IT failure. Our guest today is Fred Turner from ITS Canada, Inc., who helps Toronto CPA firms protect client data, stay compliant, and stop losing billable hours to IT headaches, and hopefully avoid ransom issues, etc. So, welcome, Fred.
Thanks, Evan.
I'm looking forward to this. And we should say we've both worked with Fred for how many years? A long time.
15 years?
Maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah. So
that's the first time we'd met him.
That's right. He's just a voice on the other end of that door.
That's right.
So anyway, good to have you in, Fred.
Thanks, you.
Yeah. So why don't you just give us a little bit of your background and some of the other things you deal with, and then we can get into more of the relevant issues that firms are dealing with.
So I've been in IT space for about 30 years in total, and I primarily work with small to medium-sized businesses. We focus on cybersecurity, IT, help desk, and anything in the IT related space, in more modern times, even AI.
Okay. How do you work? I mean, obviously you can't do all that yourself for all your clients. So have you got a virtual team? You've got a local team? How do you?
A bit of both. Yeah. So we have a virtual team that's spread across. Well, it's basically, we follow the Sun model. So we have people in Philippines, people in Ireland, people in Florida, and people in Canada. And then we have some local people who are able to go on site.
I think you've come, in the course of us working together, you've come on site in the last 15 years, maybe twice, Fred?
Maybe 5 times.
Okay.
Yeah. Not very many.
Yeah,
many.
Yeah.
So the idea is you onboard a firm, or you onboard a company, and you have noise. There's lots of issues. And the objective is to reduce the noise, reduce the ticket count. And then once you've achieved that, you don't have to go in very often, and you can automate most of the problems. So when we're looking at your systems, for example, there's hundreds of logs that we ingest, thousands of logs that we ingest from every system every day, and we're picking up those signals, and we have tools and AI that automatically responds to those, so that we're solving them before they become a problem. So that's why we don't need to come on site very often.
For those watching, I've worked with Fred for at least the last 15 years, and I have yet to find an issue that you have not yet been able to resolve. You are the voice of calm when I'm frustrated and maybe not as composed as you are over whether it's an issue with respect to our practice or something as simple as I can't get my cell phone to work. So anyway, I'm almost hesitant to talk to others about Fred because we don't want to lose you.
Too busy.
That's right.
Want to give up the secret.
Yeah. So anyway, but we were going to talk a little bit about CPA firms today and some of the threats that they face. And this has been a topic that we've been discussing amongst ourselves. And I'm sure if others aren't, there's issues that they ought to be aware of, right? So
There are, yeah.
So why are CPA firms such attractive targets? And are they? Are you seeing this more and more in your work?
Definitely. So if you think about it, what type of data do you guys have? Right? You have people's tax information, maybe banking information, sometimes access into other people's systems. So you might be a small footprint, but you have access to a wealth of data that's worth a lot of money. So when you look at are they going to attack a bank? Sure, they'd love to, but banks have a big budget to protect themselves. CPA firms tend to treat IT more like a necessary evil, right? A commodity. And so you're not spending the money on those things, and you're not spending the time and investing the time to look at the business problems that IT can solve.
Yeah, I guess it's a bigger problem for the small firms, sole practitioners, who again, like I remember early on, I had everything, all my software, all my data on one laptop.
Yeah.
Nothing was in the cloud.
Yeah.
Right. I had my McAfee, software to protect, what we thought was protection. And maybe back in those days, it was good enough.
It's crazy when you think about all the data we walked around with just in a notebook.
And you take it out. I was always a little paranoid if I had it in the car. If I went for dinner, I brought it in with me. To that extent. But things have changed a little bit since then. But even still, as a sole practitioner, despite having what I had thought was good security, good backups, when we started talking and implemented my footprint, I guess, or my world of data, I realized how useless what I had really was,
and how vulnerable
it was.
That's
so especially So for, I think in particular for the sole practitioner or really small firms who don't have resources internally, extra bodies, extra manpower who can spend the time to really work on that and look into it. It's vulnerable. So, it's essential for people to take the time and look into it and get that stuff dealt with.
So what are the scams that CPA firms are falling prey to these days? What are you seeing?
So obviously there's the standard phishing emails, which is still the most common, right? Like 90% of breaches start with an email. You have AI-driven based emails that are creating deep fakes of your partner's voices or your employees' voices. So imagine a scenario where one of your employees gets an email from you with a voice recording from you telling them to transfer money from a client's account. Are they going to question that? It's come from you. It's come from how would they know?
Ours are more, but what we're seeing more, I haven't seen that yet, but I'm seeing more emails that look legitimate, and you've got to think twice as to whether that's really
and actually the question I've been asked from clients and always wondered, is simply opening the email ever a risk, or is it via a link or just the attachment that's the risk?
It can be. So sometimes opening an email, depending if there's been recent flaws in Outlook where you open the email and it'll play a sound, right? So they've been able to abuse that sound and have it open a link on its own. So depending on whether or not your systems are fully patched, depending on whether you're being targeted, or if it's just a sort of a global active war, so to speak, where the emails are just coming to everybody, there is definitely risk in just opening it. When you're doing cyber training, they actually benchmark how many people open it, how many people click it, and how many people provide credentials.
Really?
And all those metrics matter.
Yeah. So how current does the security software that's obviously being used as part of any system, right? But how current do those systems, the security systems, stay in order to catch newer
how
newer scams?
Updated?
Yeah.
So in real time, a lot of the time these days, but the problem is you need to have layers because nothing's foolproof. You can't just have antivirus and expect it's going to stop a phishing email. Right. You can't have EDR and expect that it's going to prevent a phishing email.
What's EDR?
EDR is basically its endpoint detection and response, and what it does is it looks at the behavior of the application. You open up QuickBooks, right? Is QuickBooks now doing something that it doesn't normally do? Is it trying to access the internet in a way it doesn't normally access it? That's what EDR looks at, right? And then we have another tool that we use on your machines where, you get EDR to prevent something. Well, that's kind of like the last step of hope, right? Like that's the last thing that you're hoping is going to protect you. But you want to protect the message that comes in. You want to validate that message. When you want to validate the link you click on, should you be allowed to go to that link?
Right.
And then if it downloads something, is that thing you're downloading what is supposed to be? Not does a virus scanner detect it, but can you even be allowed to open it?
Right. Yeah, I've had many cases where I got an email with a link that I think may be legit, but I'm not sure. So I just forwarded it to Fred. Yeah. And he let him open it on his, in his system, and he'll tell me, yes, it's good, or no, it's no good, or emails that are flagged. Just the email itself that gets quarantined in with the system. And then if I know the sender, or it looks to me like it's legit, I'll tell him I think it is, but still check it out.
In working with the firms that are clients of yours, are they up to date in terms of virus software and things like that? Or what are you finding? What's the typical CPA firm, whether it's small or medium size? Are they well equipped to deal with this or not? And where's their vulnerabilities?
So we started doing discoveries for CPA firms that are kind of geared specifically towards CPA firms. And so when we do this discovery, we analyze different IT frameworks and how they map back to things that you care about. Like how does that map back to PPA? How does that map back to the code of conduct and the quality manual and benchmark for cyber insurance? And we found is well over 90% of the firms that we've done this discovery with have only about 30% of the required coverage. And when we with our clients, we make sure that that's the minimum. Everything that your insurance prescribes that you should have, and everything that your quality manual says that you should do, that's the bare minimum we do for you. We get you up to that point, and then from there we look to see what are your objectives for the year? What kind of growth are you having? We recently helped a partner who's, I guess there's an aging population in the CPA firm. So his growth strategy is to buy these retiring companies. So he wanted me to do discoveries of the people he's looking at buying to see what his business risks are going to be, because he doesn't want to just all of a sudden open his systems up to them and have a wealth of issues.
You remember this call you and I had when I was looking at an AI solution, and I had gone ahead and subscribed for it. And then you very nicely said to me, Fred, next time before you go ahead and register and spend a good amount of money, why don't you just talk to me first to see if there's any things that you should be thinking about? And it's so easy to do, where we see some tools that come out, we think, oh, that'll be great, that'll make my life simple. And there was no process in place in my practice to say, wait, before we sign up for that piece of software or that online platform, there's some work to be done. Okay? And so even, I don't know about you, but if you got new tools coming along,
I'm still using Lotus. I'm waiting till I'm comfortable. I'm waiting till I'm comfortable with the new systems out there.
You and I are completely opposite in this respect, right? Yeah.
So Ivan was able to find a billing error that I created on his abacus. Wow. But this is a problem. And AI is AI. Everybody's quick to use AI. AI has a lot of power. Problem is, how fast are you seeing these tools come up?
Yeah, very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
So do you think they're putting a lot of quality and security design into the product, or are they worried more about features that are going to make people want to buy the product?
Yeah. Or even if they do have those qualities in them, where's the data situated?
Where's data? How is it accessing your system? How are your employees using it? What are they putting in there? Right. This is thing that creates. So this, I believe, is an IBM study that was done that showed that AI tools introduce 380,000 of additional damage when there's a breach incident that has to be arbitrated with insurance, because half the time the IT company can't protect you from that because they're being used without your knowledge. They haven't been vetted properly, and they're being used in an unsafe way. So, for example, how often do you see that login with Microsoft link on your page? Do you know what that's actually doing? Well, it's making it easier to get access to it, but it's using your credentials for your guarded data and giving you access to a third-party system, but then also letting anything that's in that system have access to that guarded data. And so if it's not set up properly, then now you've introduced risk where somebody's able to get into your system without needing your password, without needing your MFA. They could just take that token and log in with it. And so that's happening way more than you would think. That's a huge. You asked what's one of the common things I see. That is a very common. We call that shadow IT, and it's very common.
What about use of cell phones? I'm using my cell phone all the time to access worksheets through Microsoft, which I can then open. What's the vulnerability in terms of cell phones to access into firm data?
Well, the clicking on the link is a similar risk.
Yeah.
The access to the data is a similar risk. The biggest risk with cell phones is often people don't put passwords on them. So if your phone is stolen, then now they have, when you log into Office 365 with your phone, you're logged in indefinitely for the most part. So now somebody can just get into your system.
What about them accessing the phone remotely and the data? Are phones typically well protected or not? Like Apple, Samsung, or iPhone versus Android?
iPhone's generally a little bit more secure. Apple does a much better job of protecting and evaluating the applications that go into their ecosystem. Android has had a number of applications that are designed to simulate or replicate or look like the real deal in the App Store. And then you download them, and then they have an issue. So the phone itself is hard to compromise, but there's a real risk of using fake applications.
So why don't we maybe like take a step back and because we're talking to CPAs and presumably, it's the smaller firms that would have more of an issue with this because the larger firms have more of a budget and more manpower to. Is that what you're not always the case?
Is that a fair assumption? Like, do your medium-sized firms spend money on this or not?
Here's what I see for the most case is they see it as a necessary evil, right? It's a cost that isn't really thought of as a business value. It's just they have to have antivirus, they have to have IT support, and I do hear this all the time. Why does it cost so much for this? So let me ask you, if you're doing my taxes and I gave you my corporate taxes and my family taxes, and you came back to me and said it's going to cost $5,000, and I said, what? Look, I can just go do it on TurboTax for $100. Why would I give it to you? What would be the reason? What would be the value to me?
I ask that all the time when I get it.
What
are you, crazy, spending that kind of money on me?
I think that was a serious question, though. But
it's the value,
the experience, and the knowledge.
If I get audited, you got my back, right? And that's the thing that standard IT or commodity IT or what we call break fix IT doesn't provide. It's cheaper, so it fits that necessary evil. And I think firms across the entire sort of space all sort of think the same way. And so there's education that has to happen that explains why this is necessary. And unfortunately, they usually find out when there's a problem and there's been downtime. So how many people do you have at your firm right now?
I have about 9.
So if you have 9 people and you're down for an hour, what's that cost?
Oh, that's of all those people, $9,000 or $10,000
for that time. Now imagine if that was once a week. Or twice a week, right? So you get, that's what break fix solves. They get, there's a problem, they go in, they fix it, they get you back online. They're not proactive and figuring out these things and putting things in place, putting measures in place to prevent them from even happening.
To me, the risk, if I ever had any breach, and this is what you and I talk a fair amount about, is how many clients would I lose?
Right. So reputation is a major thing. So imagine it's a Friday. Two 2 weeks into tax season, right? And all of a sudden, all your systems go down, and you're like, what's going on? You call your IT guy, me, and you say, and something's up. Can't have this. We're down. It's cost of money. And then you find out you've been ransomware. And sure, we have your backups, but all that data has been leaked out onto the dark web, right? That can you get that trust back? You've got to call all your clients and say, hey, not only can I not do your taxes, but I'm not sure where your data is. Someone has it. What would that cost?
So, like I started saying a second ago, let's take a step back and tell us when you go into a new firm, a new CPA firm, and let's look at a smaller firm, just as an example. What do you usually find as far as what they have in place? And then maybe just sort of lay out, in broad strokes, the steps that you would implement, the type of systems you would implement to get them up, not just to the minimum requirement, but to something that's really secure and
so like a 1 or 2 person.
Yeah.
Okay. So generally they have their data on their laptops. They don't have a server. Maybe they have things in Microsoft's cloud, but the laptop's not really protected in any way other than maybe some default Microsoft antivirus. And then they have maybe a USB stick or some hard drive they back their data up to, and they take it home and they think all I need to do is, if my laptop dies, just put that data back. So that's about the extent of it. They generally don't have MFA turned on in Office 365.
MFA?
Yeah, multi-factor authentication. So, when you use the old method of doing it, which is really being disabled tomorrow by Microsoft, is you get a thing on your phone, someone texts you, and you have to put the code in.
Right.
Now there's an app that has to be on your phone that you get a push notification to, that you accept that you saying that is you that's logging in.
What's the app?
So there's different authenticator apps. The one for Microsoft Authenticator. More advanced use cases, we use a tool called Duo. If there's a cyber insurance is requiring that's on everything now, like it should be on you log into Microsoft, you log into your bank, that should just all be there. And so what we do, the very first thing we do is we put a tool on their laptop that takes those backups, puts them into a Canadian-based cloud system that makes them immutable. So if something happens to your laptop, somebody gets on your laptop, they can't delete that data. We can always recover it. We put advanced, what's called EDR, onto the laptop, which lets us monitor the behavior of the applications on it. And then we look at how they've configured, whether it's Google or Office 365, how they've configured that, and is it meeting best practices? Because by default, those systems are not configured in your best interest. They're configured with the convenience versus the security.
Right.
And so we work with that. We'll work with you. We'll say, this is what we need to turn on. Here's why. And we get your approval. We turn that on. The next thing we do is we look to see, do you have a cyber insurance policy? Let's see it. Let's see what you've committed to. If your policy requires you to have, multi-factor, requires you to have backups, we go through that checkbox and we make sure that you're meeting all of the base requirements that they're expecting from you, so that if you do need to invoke that policy, you can. Because it's not like car insurance. Car insurance, you get somebody scratched your car, you can just call your adjuster and they'll come and they'll fix it and they'll reimburse you. Cyber insurance is more of a contract that says, I'm doing these things, and if you're not doing them, then you're just not going to they're not going to reimburse you. 1 in 4 CPA firms in 2025 have been denied a cyber insurance claim. So we go through and we make sure that you're meeting that minimum commitment. And then we look at, like I was saying earlier, we look at what's your growth plans. Like how many returns are you doing this year? How many do you want to do next year? And from an IT perspective, what do you need to have in place to support that growth?
Why is that important? I wouldn't have thought how does that translate into security?
Well, it comes down to how much you're trying to insure, and how much
I see.
risk you have in terms of either client reputation, like client damage, their reputation being damaged, yours, and also just how much data that you have to get insured through the insurance provider. Yes.
So after you've gone through in this situation, then you make recommendations to, here's your vulnerability and
Right. Yeah. We present a report that shows them where the gaps are. And then, we put a plan, whether it's, over 1 quarter or 2 years to get all those things in place in order of the most risk, because it's all really a business outcome that you're after, not really just a new piece of software.
Jason, how are you?
Great. How are you, Jonathan?
Good to see you again.
You as well.
Cyber scams, downtime, and IT failures. These are huge risks for CPA firms. I know from my own perspective, absolutely a concern, and that's why we had the topic on today. But from Audit Shield's perspective, how does this tie into what you folks are seeing?
Well, just using the example of, say, a mid-sized firm in Ontario, one click on a phishing email and it paralyzes the firm. Not just the cost of the IT disruption, it's also the downtime of your manager, your partners, and everybody else in the firm. And that's kind of the way it is when a CRA review comes up. You have to stop the conversation or the work that you're doing with your client and address the review, audit, or investigation for the CRA. So what Audit Shield does very simply is to make sure to turn that least recoverable time into your most reliable and most recoverable. And the other thing too is we get you paid generally within 2 to 3 days once you submit that claim.
So it's the same pain point. It's lost time.
Well, lost time. It's exactly what it is. And it's one of the reasons why Audit Shield exists. You could say it's because we want to make sure that every hour that a firm is spending, dealing with CRA reviews, audits, and investigations is 100% recoverable, right? Now, we can't prevent the CRA from coming and knocking down the door, but we can certainly remove the financial sting by, converting that, call it hidden, almost unrecoverable time into that guaranteed recoverable revenue.
So it's all about risk management in a sense.
I think so. You can't stop every CRA review. It's just not going to happen. But you can control the impacts.
And from what I'm seeing, that's increasing more and more.
Certainly is. We've seen it ever since opening up out of COVID. It's this incremental increase in not just the quantity of letters that we're seeing, but also the amount of time spent. For example, as we close off September, we're seeing about a 23 to 24% increase in the number of letters that we're seeing as compared to this time last year.
I can only see that increasing. I just think back in terms of the delays in issuing slips this year also. That's definitely becoming more of an issue. Very good. Any other areas you're seeing activity on?
Yeah, so just for your own interest, here's where the pressure points are currently for CRA activity as we finish off September, which, by the way, I can't believe we're moving into.
It's crazy. I know. Where's the year going?
No surprise here, Jonathan. GST, HST, QST, PST, it maintains this increase in area of focus from the CRA, pre and post assessment reviews. What's striking, though, is the amount of increased time that we're seeing as claims are being submitted. Corporate tax on the professional fees side, that's up significantly from this time last year.
That's their issue this year?
Yeah, it seems to be the hot button issue, at least within the last 90 days. Okay. Business audits. This is actually just over the last 6 to 8 weeks, we've seen a significant increase in the interest in the CRA in running the business audits, and also the amount of time spent. But the payroll, the peer program, and of course, with personal tax, the processing reviews and matching programs tends to hockey stick towards the end of Q4 and into the end of the year. So there you have it. And
thanks for keeping us up to date on these things.
Of course.
That's very helpful. Today's risks go beyond cyber scams and IT failures. CRA activity can be just as disruptive. Audit Shield makes sure that when reviews and audits happen, CPA firms don't lose their most valuable resource, their time.
So you bring them up to speed. Now, what about ongoing monitoring of those systems once you've got them?
So we monitor a lot of different, we monitor over 1,000 different data points, but primarily they break down to two areas: the security operations and network operations. So we're monitoring in security, we're monitoring your cloud environment, you were monitoring your laptop or your servers, we're monitoring your network, your internal network. your routers, your access, your speed of your internet, and so on. Then on the network operations, we're monitoring how full is your hard drive, how fast are these applications opening. We're looking for metrics that show whether or not there's a performance issue. And often we can just automatically see this report for performance issue, and a script will run in the background on your system that will solve that so that you're not having to actually call us.
Right. And, just for people watching, the way it's working is Fred can log in directly into my computer, whether it's my virtual system, my actual laptop, etc., at any time, and go in and make any of these tweaks that are necessary. And that's security wise, and that's also just regular performance wise, regular maintenance wise, to run updates or fix issues. So
yeah, we run your updates for you when we figure out what time you can afford that downtime, and then our team logs in and does those updates for you.
What about software? Like our choice around software and software vendors, how do we know their tools are secure if we're working online? Doing taxes. Is that something we should be thinking about?
Absolutely. We do vet that. So that at the beginning you were talking about that AI tool. So that was what I ended up doing. Was I reached out to the vendor and I ran through a series of questions that I asked that talks about where your data is, how they're securing your data, how they're securing access. Even things like the financial viability of the company is reported, and that gets factored into the data I provide back to you.
Have you got a checklist? Have you got a checklist that people could use just on their own for that?
It's tough because you have to understand it's an iterative process. So they're going to provide you with something. Yeah. You need to read through that and then ask the next series of questions. And so you're going to get
I'm never going to do that.
Hundreds of pages of data back.
Yeah. And you're just talking about software. I mean, the systems that we have don't allow us to install software directly without Fred clearing it beforehand.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're looking at that software, and we're looking to see whether that's an approved type of software that we've agreed upon.
Yeah.
And is it actually from the vendor that it says it is? And so our team's looking at that in the background, and once we've verified it, then we create a policy that allows it, and then you get notified that it's been approved, and then you can go ahead and install it.
Use it. Yeah. I guess for me, one of the things I worry about is when somebody's working on client work and they bring it and make a copy of it on their local machine, right, and then just work away on there. So it's kind of outside the environment.
Well, I was actually going to mention that because again, from getting the whole system set up with Fred, it's not only my office notebook and my virtual system; it's any machine that I can access any of that with. So I got my home notebook, my little Microsoft Surface that I take with me if I go on vacation or something. Any machine that I would log into my own system with has to be monitored.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you have to be thinking this way, right? Like where could this, what else? And I don't normally think, oh, I just bought a new notebook. I'm interested in getting my notebook up and running, and what to do with the old one.
Yeah.
Right. Which has got data on it as well.
Right.
That's another concern.
So, so it's, you really have to keep in the back of your mind all these additional points and don't do anything until you talk to Fred, because we have no idea really what the implications are or might be.
Yeah. And that's why having policies are important, right? So you want to have things like policies for how what types of systems can access your data, so your staff can follow that.
Although practically speaking, for somebody who's working on their own, it's just they've got to remember, right? In your case, you do a lot of the stuff on your own. A policy isn't going to mean anything to you. You've just got to remember. You've got to have a system in place that makes sure it catches you.
Right, but even from my situation, like I said, I've got a notebook here. I've got a notebook at home. I've got a third one that I take around with me.
Yeah.
And for example, if let's say you want to log into your system through your wife's machine.
Yeah.
Right. then that one now has to be monitored.
Yeah.
Right. So all these machines are now tied into the one system and all monitored through Fred's
and by Paul's too, what I mean is like that's covered in the agreement that we have together that says this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to interact, and you know the engagement between myself and my client is trust based as well. Like I need to trust that they're going to engage me with these things so that I can protect them properly, and that way I'm protected, they're protected, and if there's something that does go wrong, I can be able to stand behind them.
Now, we said at the outset, you and I have worked together a long time, and just within the last 2 weeks, we've come up with an issue on our portal. We have a client portal, and never gave a thought to the security around it. It's a fairly well-known portal, and it's just for accounting firms, but didn't have dual factor authentication on it, which is now kind of standard. And that came out of a court case that you were talking about. Tell us about that.
So the city of Hamilton was breached. It's pretty well-known breach. It went on for months, and they got ransomwared. And ransomware this day and age is worse for a CPA firm than say for the city, depending on the type of data they get access to. But they did extort the city. They got the data, and they said we're going to extort this. But it wasn't data they cared enough about that they said, yeah, we'll pay. Mm-hmm. So they said no, we're not going to pay, and we're just going to recover our systems from backups. And it took months for them to do so, and it cost them $24 million, somewhere in that range. So when it's all said and done, they took to the insurance company and they said, we are going to, we want to file this claim.
Okay.
So the insurance adjuster came out, they went through everything, and they said, well, we found some systems that you didn't have multi-factor authentication on, so you breached the contract with us. We're not paying out. And so that went to court, and the courts found in favor of the insurance company. And so now that is becoming one of the things that your insurance can be denied for. And there's several, and it's...
So when I think of my portal, our client portal, we have clients who have years of information on there.
Yeah.
Social
that minimum
insurance,
7, right?
Well, yeah, depending on how long that portal's been around, but it isn't just this year. I mean, people have it. So we're now getting into whether or not we delete data that's a certain age automatically, and if it falls outside of that period of time, then it's just automatically deleted because it's so unwieldy. But there's so much information in there, and I would never have even thought. That's the reason we went with that portal, was because it was considered to be designed for public accounting firms and secure, and they don't have something. You know, they're bringing in that multi-factor or dual factor authentication.
Yeah, multi-factor.
Yeah, right. But that's not coming in for another 6 weeks. And then after all the paranoia, we still have exposure, right?
Right, and that's why it's important to constantly have somebody monitoring and checking that for you.
Yeah.
Right. That's not a software that I built or support.
Yeah.
But it's something that.
But it's a common one for public accounting firms.
Pretty common, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And often you'll find that even though if they have it, it's not set up. So, but again, that's a
features there, but it's deactivated.
Yeah,
because it's too inconvenient.
The convenience of and the knowledge to set it up.
Yeah.
It takes a bit of effort and understanding to set that up in a safe way that doesn't really negatively impact the workflow. Yeah. Because then people aren't going to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I have staff complaining, saying, you know, it takes so much longer just to log into something. That's the environment we find ourselves in now.
Right. Yeah. It's the convenient security model. Right?
Have there been any CPA firms that you know of that have been hit? And I'm not talking about names, but what was the story?
Well, there's a pretty famous case from last year. It was in Maine. They were breached through a vendor. So a tool they were using was compromised. Wow. And that gave them way into their systems. And I believe it was 1 million records were exfiltrated out of the company, and 1 million records worth of clients were contacted to say that, hey, your data's been breached. So this vendor, worked with their provider, worked with their insurance companies, got the issue sorted. Massive reputation damage. And they filed a claim for 10 million, and it was largely denied because they didn't have all the pieces in place.
But that was the vendor.
Even though it was the vendor going in, once they didn't have mechanisms to protect that data from when the vendor was breached.
Yeah. So I guess one of the considerations is the vendors you're using, are they able to, with, how financially viable are they if there's ever a claim?
A lot of them have what's called a shared responsibility model. So Microsoft, let's just say Microsoft gets breached, right? Or a client of Microsoft gets breached. And that they start sending emails out to you, like business email compromise. So you're getting emails from a trusted source, and that gets you breached. Now that damage, Microsoft is not helping with that. That's 100% on the organization who was responsible for getting breached. So that shared responsibility model is pretty common across all cloud providers. So it's up to you to back your data up, protect your data, protect your accounts, and their liability stops at system uptime.
So is cyber insurance then worthwhile? Like, is there, because the reason I ask this is because it seems like it's almost impossible to guard against everything.
It's almost like pet insurance,
Yeah.
right? You pay a lot. But I mean, before Fred answers it, I mean, I think he's going to say you have to, even if there's a large a good chance that you're not going to be covered.
Yeah.
But I mean, you answer. But I think you basically have to have it, for whatever chance you have of being covered, and more steps you take working with someone like Fred to make sure your systems are up to snuff. Then your chance of being covered is that much greater.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly it, right? Like if you got breached, and just to say the average cost to a CPA firm for a breach in Canada is 10 million, right? So let's just say you had a $10 million breach, and you were doing all the right things, and you could prove you're doing all the right things, then your insurance company will have your back. And that's, so you want to make sure you're doing all the things you can, because if you didn't have it, now you're responsible for that $10 million. You might have reputation damage, right? But you're also going to have.
But Fred, if my policy was in force, and then we discover, partway through the year that we've got exposure in this portal, would that be sufficient for an insurance company to get out of paying a claim because there was at some point a vulnerability, or not? How does that work? Because it's like I'm chasing an impossible target.
Only if you don't fix that vulnerability, and that was the mechanism that the breach happened.
So as soon as it becomes drawn to our attention,
they're only going to look at what was in place at the time of the breach,
right?
What wasn't in place at the time, right? But if you have vulnerabilities and you take care of them,
that shuts down.
That would shut it down,
right? Yeah.
But is there ever a situation where you've got a good system, somehow you do get breached, you were taking appropriate steps in the area where the breach occurred, right? But maybe there was if they audit your system, they find a vulnerability in another part of your system that had nothing to do with that breach.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that enough for them to cover?
So a neg on the coverage.
Yeah. So if your deficiency didn't have anything to do with the breach, can they deny the whole thing?
So I think theoretically yes, but you have to think that it's a process and a checklist. So your insurance policy is going to start out by saying you have to do all these things: MFA on everything, EDR on everything. And so if you're working with a competent vendor, they're going to know what your systems are and what the capabilities of those systems are. And they're going to go through that checklist and make sure that that's applied in all cases.
So both parties are agreeing at this point. This is the insurance provider as well as the firm is saying, this is what we will do, and you will cover us.
That's
based
right.
on that.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And you're right now, it's mostly a checklist. So if you remember back when we were looking at the insurance policies, it's that they're asking you, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Right now, they're taking your word for it. At the beginning, you're doing these things. Yeah. And then auditing you sometimes throughout, or sometimes at the end when there's a.
But what's typical? Are what are you doing for my firm, for example, on an ongoing basis? And I'm asking that so you can kind of describe and set the expectation for somebody who's watching today, is to say, okay, this is what should at a minimum be happening to preserve coverage.
So you want to have a really good system for protecting email, right? So there's.
I think I got a good system. How would I?
So
Did you know that or
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So these systems are all rated, and so you want to make sure you're using a well-rated platform that's configured based on the recommendations of the vendor. And you want to make sure it doesn't just protect email going in, but also going out, and also between what we call east-west. So if you're emailing your members of your firm, that should be evaluated too, right? A lot of systems sit on the outside of the email and just scan email going in and out. Well, that will cover you for that checklist. It won't protect a business email compromise. So you want to make sure you have that in place. That's the first thing. You want to make sure your systems have proper EDR and antivirus. You want to make sure that your systems are being monitored and that there's logging happening and that you can prove that.
Now, who's doing the monitoring?
So if you don't have a managed service company, then you are.
So you're a managed service provider?
That's right.
Okay. So for me, you're checking on an ongoing basis.
In real time, constantly, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You do these things called pen tests.
Yeah.
What are they?
So penetration test is we simulate what an attacker would try to do in your system. So we try to breach your system in a friendly way to get access to your data and find any misconfigurations or user errors or user behaviors that allow us to get in. And then we will provide a recommendation of solutions to solve that. So you want to.
Does the insurance company ever ask for that?
They do.
They do. Yeah. And what's my response? How do I know? How do I demonstrate that I've responded to those? How do I prove that?
So you get what is called a remediation list. Here are the things that we need to solve. And when that's presented to you, we make a plan about implementing fixes for those things. So such as the MFA that we found missing on your portal.
But if you have to show the insurance company that these are being done, that's something that you would attest to.
That's right.
As part of our agreement.
That's right.
And you would tell the insurance
Now, our job is to log all of these things. And so if you, for example, said, if I came to you, Jonathan, and said, hey, we need to fix this MFA in your portal, and you said, yeah, it's too expensive, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I would make you sign a limitation of liability clause that says, I told you this, and you recognize the risk, but you don't want to make that. So that way I'm protecting myself. But if you do agree and we do it, and if you ever needed to get in front of an insurance adjuster, I have the proof to show that we found it and we solved it in this time frame. So that's what a true managed service provider will do. Unfortunately, there's a lot of companies out there that call themselves managed service providers. And you can think of it like the difference between a bookkeeping firm doing your taxes and a CPA firm doing your taxes. You're getting vastly different levels of skill and services offered. And that's really the difference between sort of standard IT and managed IT. Managed IT covers you.
Do you explain that on your website?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, I've had some cases where I've referred clients to Fred who've had issues, and I said, "Well, what have you been doing up to now?" "Oh, I have my IT guy." I said, "Well, what does your IT guy do?" "No, he installs my software and make sure my network connection is good." I said, "Is he a security guy?" "Well, he does everything."
I think he is.
Yeah,
I think he's a security guy.
But and I tell them
that's why
exactly like the example you gave, right? It's not everybody is a specialist in every area, so you have to deal with specific topics or specific issues with the experts.
How do you know what those topics are, right?
Well, that's the problem. That's the thing. A lot of small business people aren't aware of that, and in this day and age, it's kind of silly not to be aware of it, right?
It's pretty common though.
It is.
It is something I hear all the time. Like, well, my brother's got a friend that does this stuff on the side, and whenever we have a problem, we call him, and eventually he comes and fixes it, and he's backing up our data to this local drive, right? So we can recover it if we have to. That's very, very common.
Yeah. Are there any insurance providers in this field that you can mention? Like, where do people start to look for coverage for this?
So I wrote a blog about this. There was a series of webinars I attended, and they were highly recommending Marsh because Marsh works with IT providers to validate that the data is I personally haven't worked with Marsh, but I've been hearing a lot of good things about them and how they work with what I've also been reading, and my blog dives a bit more detail into it, but is that insurance providers aren't all the same, just like CPAs aren't all the same. So the coverage you're going to get
that's why I say
different.
Who in your experience is a worthwhile underwriter to these risks?
So a lot of clients I have been using Marsh.
Is there anyone else?
There's Chubb. I don't know much about them, but large organizations tend to work with Chubb. I think they're North America wide. There's lots of brokers, but the actual company they're using.
But oftentimes brokers are just representing insurers. They don't
multiple insurers. Yeah. And then people often shop it around.
Yeah.
Go for the cheapest insurance policy, right? But just like with anything, you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you suggest firms start with this if they feel they're behind in this area? Where do they start?
I say start with a discovery, right? Like something that we offer, and a lot of managed service providers offer, is they do a discovery. You go in, and it's, some call it a 21 point or 100 point, but ultimately they're auditing your environment against known frameworks, and those frameworks, like that's what IT is governed against, are these frameworks. So they look at all the areas that you should be protected, and we look at what the sort of minimums are for cyber insurance, and then we report that to you, and then help you make a plan to solve those problems.
And what should practitioners be thinking about in terms of issues coming up in 2025 and beyond? What are areas of risk that are emerging?
So AI is a big one, right? Because if you're using AI,
what's the risk?
Who else is using AI?
Okay.
Right. So the bad guys are using AI. So it used to be, if there was a flaw, say in a firewall, right, or your VPN, someone has to work for a long time to figure out that flaw and to figure out how to exploit that flaw. AI is helping do that in hours.
Okay.
AI is helping write really, really, really good emails. That used to be, the email would be full of mistakes. It would be a prince in Nigeria offering you money. Now it's the CRA, and it looks like it's coming from the CRA. Even the email address looks like the CRA. Like I said, voice cloning, but cyber insurance is changing. The requirements are changing. There's laws being, tabled all the time around this thing called the duty to report. Right now in the US, if you get a breach, you have to report it. Right now in Canada, you have to report it in some cases, right? If it's violating PPR rules, you have to have a breach notification, but not in all cases. That's changing. So I think that it's just going to get harder and harder to qualify for cyber insurance if you're not taking action.
So AI, when you say AI is a threat, it's not that opens a portal into your systems. It's the capability of AI to replicate what looks like a authentic
Emails, yeah.
Right.
So when I'm doing a pen test, for example, right, I run a scan of your network, and it used to be I would have to read through that scan and look for known ways to penetrate the environment. Now I have a tool that rummages through all this data, goes out, looks for proof of concepts, looks for ways to do it. So what would take me a week takes me a few hours. If I want to write a phishing email, if I'm going to test you guys for your social engineering capabilities or social awareness, we're going to social engineer you, and we're going to use a tool to help understand your footprint, who you work with, what tools you use, and what emails from those tools look like, and we're going to send you those emails.
Yeah, I'm just thinking one of our emails is my wife's email. My wife doesn't necessarily work on stuff every day, or is even aware of an email that comes through. So oftentimes you will have people that aren't frequently using it. They're probably the weakest link in the whole environment. Yeah. They're the ones most likely to not pick up on an email that is a dangerous email.
People are what they call the weakest link when it comes to security. Right? And it's not that they're bad, or it's not that they're untrained. They have deadlines and priorities, and they're just trying to do a good job. Right. And so you need to put them in a position to be protected. Right.
I might have a different take on the definition. You might.
Good or bad.
That maybe not the word I would. We won't.
No, that's what it comes down to. People are the weakest link. That's why phishing emails is the most common way in. And AI, the other part of AI being a threat is just like we talked about. I helped you write a policy for AI acceptable usage, right? Because if you gone, or AI is a great thing. I use it constantly. It helps me solve problems faster. It helps me write emails quicker. It helps me, take an email where I might sound a little bit angry and make it more professional, right? And so AI does a lot of stuff, has a lot of
think about
I do it the other way. You fake the nice one, and I make.
and but
me a lot
people
of
are trying to
trouble.
use it, right? People want to use it. They want to help themselves get their job done faster.
Yeah.
And if you're not providing them tools to use and guidance on how to use them and guidance what not to do, then how do you know that they're not putting confidential client information in a free AI tool? And how do you know that that tool isn't using that data to train the model?
Yeah.
Or that tool hasn't been compromised?
Yeah. And that's a completely other episode to talk about is how to use AI. And we've got a few of those already on topics. On your website, you've got some resources.
I do. Yeah, I have. I'm actually writing a couple of white papers. First of all, that's going to talk about some of this. It's called the IT Buyer's Guide. I have another one, a webinar that I'm putting up on there very recently that shows some pretty neat ways to use AI to help you in basically to create an AI worker to help you with some, to speed up some of your daily tasks.
And around security, cybersecurity, any resources there on that?
I have a blog I write a weekly, more than weekly blog. And one of the big topics is cybersecurity. I write in the industry specific blog posts, and I often put them on LinkedIn as well.
Okay. And how do people get in touch with you, Fred?
So my website is its-can.com. And on there's a contact form. They can reach us there. There's a phone number. And then again, there's a wealth of information on there about all these topics.
Very good. Anything else?
I just think that this is a big business concern that people often overlook, and often for all the wrong reasons. And I think that this is a good topic to be educating people on, especially CPA firms, because there's just so much data at risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's the firms to make their clients aware of these issues, where
Absolutely.
in a lot of cases, they're
Share the
obviously not.
Share the exposure.
Absolutely.
If you remember, I helped you guys write your engagement letters to add a clause there that specifically tells them why not to send you this data through email and help you with your liability if they do. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Can we share that? We should maybe share samples of this type of thing just for people who are in the same boat, who may not have this.
Sure. Yeah, I have a template that I just send to everybody.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. So anybody interested can just email Fred and
or they can
get that,
or they can contact
us. Yeah. But as Fred said, I added this. I took my email clause was one paragraph, and now it's like 6.
Yeah.
But it now covers.
Yeah. Is that in your footer of your email as well? Do you have a footer? More and more, I'm adding things to the footer of emails.
Put it in the footer,
you might
which is actually a good idea.
Right? Because that's the very place you want to put it, as well as in your engagement.
Right. Sounds a good idea.
Yeah. Very good. Fred, thanks so much. I've been looking forward to this conversation today, because just from the conversations we've had over the years, this is such a pressing issue.
And it's also nice to get him here in person for the second time in 15 years.
Right. And Fred, I got some questions on my cell phone. Can you take a look at it?
Sure.
Okay.
I will say we barely scratched the surface. Absolutely. Right. But it's an important topic.
Yes. Well, I'm sure we'll have Fred back again for the next round and more details. And
yeah, I've been talking to Allison about a second podcast.
Very good.
So thanks again for joining us today on this episode. We hope it was insightful, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share with anyone you think might find the information useful. And hopefully they'll be grateful, especially for this topic. And we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.